Miss Linda Janet Holmes. She's a writer, she's an independent scholar, and she's a longtime women's health activist. She published extensively on the practices of African American midwives in the South. In line with this work, she recently received the National Endowment for the Humanities Fellowship and has guest curated a multimedia exhibition hosted by the Smithsonian Institute's Anacostia Museum called Reclaiming Midwives. Tonight, Ms. Holmes will be reading from her book, A Joyous Revolt, Tony K. Bambara, writer and activist, which is a first-time ever biography of the groundbreaking artist. Ms. Holmes' relationship to Bambara goes back some 4 decades, and the book comes out May 1st. May 1st? Yay, round of applause. It's such an important contribution.
That's what he said. I just moved to Portsmouth, Virginia, and in Virginia you always have to do greetings. You know, how is everybody? Good. I must not be in Portsmouth, Virginia. It's wonderful to be here. It's almost like having full circle, in that there are so many people in this room from different parts of my life. Some that almost feel ancient, like Leslie, from when I was working on public health at Columbia University. And that's where I met Pamela, and we continue a wonderful friendship. And then more recently, well, that was also Columbia, Natalia Kanem hosted me in Copenhagen, Senegal, as a writer in residence, and a friend from that time is also here. I'm going to be reading from a biography that has taken a long time to write and to research. And the biography is on Tony K. Bambara. It's wonderful to know that you know Tony K. Okay. That doesn't always, now that doesn't happen in Portsmouth. So why don't I just move into the reading? For some reason, Quincy Troop told me not to read from the chapter in the wonderful journal, but to read something else from the book. So you're going to hear something else from the book. I'm going to be reading from chapter 6, which is called Making Dreams Work. And at this time, Tony K. Bambara is living in Atlanta. Oh, and Walter Cade is here, Tony's brother, who also saw this long journey take place. I'm going to start with a reflection from Tony that is in the chapter. In the winter of 77, 78, while pursuing an idea that would not stay put within the parameters of the short story form and broke loose to become the novel, The Salt Eaters, I recognized finally that writing was not only a central activity in my life, it was the center at which everything also converged or revolved around. I was a writer. I took 3 days out to review the backlog. I noted amongst the published work in overstuffed folders and notebooks a process, a chart. I listened to my contradictions, to my duplicities of feelings, and I probed beneath the smooth camouflage of word for telltale droppings. Writing is like dreaming, I was discovering. To grow, you have to take risks. Dreams confront, characters do too. Writing her novel was different from anything she experienced in writing short stories. It felt similar to receiving a spiritual call. Bummerer explained, I had to put the novel aside twice, but finally, one day I'm walking out in the woods that some folks call my front yard, and I slumped down next to my favorite tree and just said, okay, I'm stepping aside, y'all. I'm getting out the way. What is the story I'm supposed to be telling? Tell me. Then I wrote The Salt Eaters. As The Salt Eaters opens, Velma, a burned-out 1960s activist who attempted suicide, is seated on a stool in a healing circle and is asked the question, which is at the core of the novel, are you sure, sweetheart, that you want to be well? The question is raised by Minnie Ransom, a renowned healer in the community who wears a, quote, flouncy dress tied by 2 types of kente cloth, is adorned with 50 pounds of silver bangles, carries the scent of coconut in an afro tucked underneath a turban, and is sometimes directed by her spirit guide, Old Wife. Ransom has extraordinary powers, including the ability to cure cancer. This hip-dressing Afrocentric centurion is free of ties to any specific religion, practice, or tradition. Ransom's patient Velma has overextended herself in meeting the needs of the community and the needs of her husband and the needs of her family, sacrificing her own needs for personal time and restoration. Velma has even tried to rescue others from the repeated exploitation of grandstanding civil rights leaders who exploit the grassroots, particularly women and children. Similar to the sexist issues that Bambara writes about in The Black Woman, the black male civil rights leaders who Velma encounters in The Salt Eaters accomplish little more than promoting themselves as heroes of the people. The journey to wellness in The Salt Eaters requires that Velma make choices, including claiming the right to her own health. Ransom makes it clear, however, that her patient is not alone on her journey to wellness and wholeness. There are an array of healing forces in her midst, which include timeless spirits such as the ancient mud mothers dwelling in million-year-old caves, haints and orishas that float in and out of the healing circle. There are also real-world healing forces such as clairvoyants, elders, and wise women who surround Velma in the circle of healing. The power Bambara attributed to dance is multicultural, as is the Salt Eaters' eccentric dance teacher who wants her students, 3 black women, Lebanese, Greek, and Pakistani women, along with 1 Chinese woman, to root themselves in their sacred traditions and in their pelvic movements found in the dances of each of their cultures as she counters amnesia by whispering the word, remember, remember, remember. Drawing examples from her own life, Bambara also employs music as a powerful instrument for combating amnesia and aiding in recovery. All of the remembered sounds of her mother's classical and jazz piano, her father's spoken word in Harlem, and the bebop she heard in Greenwich Village explode in the Salt Eaters. Interconnecting the names of Wagner, Coltrane, Ornette Coleman, and Dexter Gordon, Bambara creates a musical score within the novel that includes the pit-tit tabaka-baka of small drums and the rada-rada booming from the park, which are then smothered by strains of Dexter Gordon's Tower of Power blasting from a jukebox. The din of nature, lightning, thunder, rain, and the shaking earth also contributes to the vibrations that enlighten and encompass the healing. The healing ground Bambara creates for Velma is an infirmary built right after the Civil War. As part of the Academy of the 7 Healing Arts, the Southwest Community Infirmary, built by the Free Colors of Claiborne after the Civil War, shares land with what was once a Masonic lounge and a fellowship hall, but now aims to unite martial arts, medical arts, and the arts and humanities. An ancient tree outside the infirmary frequently has pots of water hanging from its branches, carried there by Ransom to honor the ancestors. In The Salt Eaters, the principal Ransom employs her skills and power to welcome Velma to a healing place where Velma can reclaim her intuitive gifts and make choices about the work that she wants to do. In the awaited climatic moment of healing, the sky is lit by tomorrow's memory lamp, and that is a quote, and Velma is, quote, replenished like the lady rising from the sea. Velma is aglow in 2 yards wide of clear and unstreaked white and yellow. After publication of The Salt Eaters, Bambara explained that the initial idea, however, for creating the healer Minnie Ransom emerged from her wanting to confront Ishmael Reed's characterization of Minnie Yellings in his novel, The Last Days of Louisiana Red. Reed describes Minnie Yellings as the queen of the moochers, who fails to follow in the footsteps of her more spiritually righteous father, who studies the gumbo in New Orleans. When asked to review Reed's Louisiana Red, Bambara was appalled to find that Reed did not provide any guiding principles for many yellings. Bambara explained, "So I thought I should ransom Minnie," and the book evolved around my concern about the split between medicine people, healers, or whatever you want to call them, and the politicians, historians, and so on. The question critics such as her friend Ishmael Reed and others have asked about the Salt Eaters is, will Velma's healing be a lasting one? In Airing Dirty Laundry, a collection of critical essays by Reed, Reed identifies part of Velma's illness as an addiction to the mimeograph machine, the primary tool for organizing and outreach at the time. Reed wrote, "Though Velma is healed at the end of the book, one gets the feeling that it won't be long before she's back at the mimeograph machine. The moral of that book seems to be that as soon as one oppressor lets up, another one takes his place. And while the foes in the abolitionist novel and those of folklore were as easy to identify as devils in morality plays, the modern villain may be the father of your child." Bambara must have been aglow, like Velma, at the novel's finish, but the question before Bambara was similar. Will she have the resurgence needed to continually battle the bite of corporate power and racism and to find cures for social, environmental, and other diseases that plague her own community, particularly the most troubling, amnesia? As the summer of 1979 began to transition into autumn, Bambara continued business as usual, making final ids to the Salt Eaters while also contributing to political action. When Sojourner South, a network of 150 black women based in Atlanta, began organizing an anti-apartheid poster campaign, Bambara offered support. During that year, the United Nations International Year of the Child, Bambara supported other events that the Sojourner South organization sponsored, including one of the anti-apartheid marches held in downtown Atlanta. Chaired by her friend Jan Douglas, Sojourner South also aimed to increase awareness about the plight of tortured and murdered African children living under oppressive regimes. On August 27, 1979, Bambara submitted the manuscript of the Salt Eaters for publication, noting the positioning of the planets in the cosmos, which was finally in the second and third years of the last quarter. The book was edited under Leo's double moon. At this point, dreams, ancestral spirits, and astronomical influences are significant in Bambara's life and writing. In The Salt Eaters, Bambara has been described as a political, spiritual healer in a literary laying on of hands to help cure the culturally ill through similar metaphysical forces. In The Salt Eaters, Bambara made numerous calls to women of color, surely one of the most significant being for women to claim wholeness for themselves. Bambara's call for women of color to create wholeness within themselves must be viewed as a powerful antidote to burnout and complaint that far too often was the consequence of tireless struggles to overcome political, social, and economic inequities. Bambara viewed self-care and self-remembrance to be as revolutionary as political acts. That is, making time for one's personal craft, creating alliances among women of color, remaining deeply rooted in one's own cultural traditions, recognizing a woman's power to speak for herself while making choices that foster a deeper relationship with one's inner self as critical to well-being. Rather than assign responsibility for health solely to medical practitioners, Bambara imagines health beginning with self and supported by a range of caregivers, including midwives and healers. These issues are occasionally discussed in scientific journals, but more often discussed among health activists and scholars in the public health and women's health community. The Salt Eaters, as well as other works of Bambara's fiction, are important because she uses her storytelling craft to make an important holistic case for empowering self within the annals of literature. Writing would always be a political act for Toni K. Bambara, but it would also be a source of joy, particularly when she viewed her writing as demystifying existing sources of power and suggesting new relationships and alliances for change. This Bambara succeeded in doing in writing The Salt Eaters. 3 years after completing The Salt Eaters, Bambara continued to reflect on the monumental significance of completing her first novel and what was required of her to do so. In a letter to her cousin, Carol Brown, Toni wrote, "Yeah, writing is hard work, ain't it? Requires a selfish, get the fuck out my face, hard-headed, obsessive, no, I don't want to take a break to see a movie determination. I am continually amazed that I have any friends at all, Carol, because I have thrown people bodily out of my house for walking in uninvited and unannounced, trying to rescue me from my work. Continually amazed also that I could put in long, rigorous hours at the desk and have no more than 2 good pages to show for it. What keeps me going, among other things, is that I'm determined to learn how to write, to master forms, push the language to its limits. It used to be a part-time pastime, soon as I got a minute sort of thing. Then when Salt grabbed hold of me, hi Quincy, writing became more and more a central activity. It is now a compulsion and a joy and my unction and the thing. Was telling some little PhD child the other day who's been in my face wanting to do a little bio on me, girl, I've only just begun to hit my stride. Check back with me in 5 years and we'll talk. Around the time she wrote to her cousin, Bambara told writer Claudia Tate in an interview that she viewed her responsibility as a writer to be a truth teller. As in The Salt Eaters, Bambara again made an interconnection between the political and the spiritual. She explained, "We have rarely been encouraged and equipped to appreciate the fact that the truth works, that it releases the spirit, and that is a joyous thing." Having recently completed her first novel, Bambara joyfully saluted herself as a writer, and so would others.